The Chargers offense has struggled mightily over the past 2 games for a variety of reasons, but the pitchforks are already starting to come out for Greg Roman.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. A special happy birthday to David. As you guys all saw yesterday, it was David's birthday, and he still did a show because he's a real warrior like that. But to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, Greg Roman said, imagine what Justin Herbert would look like if the Chargers had a running game. But unfortunately, through 4 games, that vision has not come to fruition. And Joshua Palmer, is he your number 1 wide receiver? Number 2? Maybe not any of those things. And could Joe Ortiz move Joey Bosa this year before his contract is up?
Because you know what today is? It is Tuesday, so it is our buy or sell day, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions. But I do need to tell you guys about Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. David, I love buy or sell. We always, ever since we've switched to this format, and especially getting the fans more involved this season, I've really loved it all. And I think there was one kind of main storyline that was sticking out in a lot of the buy or sells this week, and it had to revolve around Greg Roman. And I think there's a lot of frustration about the offense. And Greg Roman was a hiring that we were critical of. We still wanted to be positive about what it could be, but I think it's kind of what led to the buy or sells we have, like this one from Matthew Dodds, who says, buy or sell. If the offense continues to perform this season this poorly, Greg Roman will not make it through the end of the season. So, overreaction Tuesday is today. I don't think Greg Roman's in trouble at all this season. I would be shocked if anything happened. I mean, Greg Roman is Jim Harbaugh's guy through and through. He's told you before, like Moses, he's going to die leaning on his staff, and maybe he's loyal to a fault in that way. I don't think that Greg Roman is going anywhere. But I do think it's fair to question how much of the offense's problems are Greg Roman, because I do think there are a variety of things, and everything's going to sound like an excuse to some extent, but these are just the facts of it, right? I mean, you've had major injuries. Justin Herbert's been banged up the last 2+ games. You didn't have your top tackles in the last game. The whole last kind of quarter, game and a half of football, it's hard to really know what you would have seen from a fully healthy version of the Chargers offense. That being said, there has to be accountability on the coaching staff, and specifically with Greg Roman, because like we saw in this last game, like going 3 quarters straight without scoring at all is inexcusable. And David, I think he's not going to get fired at any point this season. I would be shocked to see that, but it doesn't mean it hasn't been a real issue so far.
Yeah, I'm also going to sell it. Greg Roman's worked with Jim Harbaugh at multiple different stops. This is a relationship that has formed over many, many years. So there's no way in God's green earth that Jim Harbaugh is going to fire Greg Roman after 1 season. And as much as people don't want to hear this, Rome was not built in a day. We are 4 games into the season. We are 1 quarter in. It's way too early. And are there problems? Absolutely, there are very real problems. The Chargers have not been able to run the football. They have gone on way too many droughts where they have not been able to put consistent drives together. But they've also dealt with some crippling injuries that have really, really gotten in the way of them executing their vision of running the football, of staying ahead of the sticks, of taking some pressure off of Justin Herbert. That just hasn't been able to manifest itself so far this season. Now, do they need to be able to string those drives together and take some pressure off of Justin, especially now when he's dealing with the injury? Yes. And does that fall on Greg Roman as the play caller? Partially it does. And so they have to take this time during the bye week, figure some things out schematically, be able to draw some plays up to get some consistent drives going, or else this sentiment that we're hearing right now is going to be getting louder and louder as the season goes on.
And he deserves a chance to have this bye week and put in the work and try to fix some of the issues they have. And part of it's personnel, right? The interior guys that you have on the offensive line have not been able to improve under the tutelage of this new coaching staff and make the leap that you wanted them to make. And honestly, the leap they needed to make for an offense like this to be super successful. Because guess what? The running game has been super feast or famine. That's it. They either have run the ball exceptionally well or they've run it terribly. And this is not an offense that can do that. But now half the games this year, you haven't been able to run the football. And when you haven't been able to run the football, your passing game isn't good enough or you can't keep Herbert protected enough to find any success there. And the problem also is you have a very inexperienced skill group, especially at wide receiver, and you wanted your run game to support that young group and support Justin Herbert. It hasn't been able to do that at all the last two games, and it's completely crumbled. You haven't seen Greg Roman be able to evolve with the players that he has going into a game and have a game plan where, according to Daniel Popper and True Media, Justin Herbert was pressured 51.7% of the time in this last game, the fourth highest of his career, and he's been with some really, really terrible offensive lines. All of that is bad. And the NFL, you have to have a threat through the passing game. You have to have a legitimate passing game. And with Justin Herbert, there's no real excuse that they don't have that. It's never really big Greg Roman's strength, though. It just hasn't.
Yeah.
He's a run game specialist. And the passing game, I mean, I think Lamar Jackson in 5 seasons had one 3,000-yard passing season. That's just not
3,000.
3,000 yards, right? 3,000 yards, which would be the least Justin Herbert has ever had in a healthy season. But Athir also had an apology and has some questions about Greg Roman himself. Let's hear what Athir has for us on this Buy or Sell Tuesday.
Okay, Daniel, this is Athir. All right, I am sorry. I was wrong. They did not score 13 points. But this is what I like to say. Coach Harbaugh needs to get involved in this offense after the bye. Roman cannot handle Herbert. Herbert is too good. Herbert is too much for him. He cannot handle him. It's time for Coach Harbaugh to get involved in this offense if we want to make a playoff. Thank you. Love you.
Athir, I appreciate your apology. We and Athir had a deal going in his last game because he thought I was absolutely crazy for picking the Chargers to have 13 points in the last game when I made my prediction for the game. Well, they scored 10. It was looking really bad one quarter in, but unfortunately the Chargers decided to not score the other 3 quarters, making me right when I so badly wanted to be wrong about it. But the fact of the matter is I can't trust the offense. I trusted it even less without their 2 starting tackles, both of who were playing at a very high level. And especially going up against a good defense. They have crumbled against good defenses the last 2 weeks in a row. But this is one thing I wanted to clear up. I'm buying this from the standpoint of Harbaugh has to demand more from them. Yeah, whether that's letting Mark Trestman have more of a say or letting Marcus Brady have more of a say or, just having them focus more on being a team that wants to be able to throw the ball and make that a strength of this team, whatever it takes. But Jim Harbaugh's not calling any plays, David. I've seen some people, there is a sentiment out there that, hey, Jim Harbaugh should take over play calling. That's not Jim Harbaugh's thing. Even as a former quarterback, he's not a guy who's an offensive coordinator in the league at one point or anything. He was a quarterback's coach at one point, but he's not an offensive play caller in that way.
Yeah, I'm buying the fact that, he can get more in on the offensive side of things and get more, into saying, hey, maybe that we should do this or suggesting things. But Jim Harbaugh is a CEO type of coach. He is overseeing the entire operation, special teams, defense, offense. He is not going to be calling plays. That's not what he has done throughout his tenure as a coach. And what he has done, it has worked at an extremely high level. So I think we need to give him and his coaching staff the benefit of the doubt. Are they on a losing streak? Yeah, it sucks. And they are. But, they have some time to try to figure things out. And Jim Harbaugh is going to try to oversee that entire team improving going into the bye week and getting out of the bye week.
Chargers have the second fewest passing yards this year, only behind the New England Patriots. Right, they were second in rushing yards through 2 weeks in the NFL, only behind the Packers. Now they're 11th.
Yeah.
The problem is, I think also, this is kind of what Jim Harbaugh's offenses look like. This is what it looked like in Michigan to a certain extent, except for they could impose their will on everyone. And that is something that's going to take time to get the personnel needed to bully every team you play at this level. And it's hard to do even then, even if you've had years to try to put that kind of team together. They've had one offseason. But at the end of the day, this is what Jim Harbaugh has been like in his offenses, especially recently, especially at Michigan. He wants to be able to physically pummel people, play, have a strong running game, have a strong defense, and have that be what this, kind of what this team relies on most. The problem is they haven't been able to do that the last 2 weeks, and it hasn't been good enough because they've had the best defense in the league points per game wise this season. and they're 2-2, which is crazy. But we still have more to get into, including Joshua Palmer's struggles. I know the frustration about him is at an all-time high right now, and also just why this team is missing Keenan Allen and the ways he was helping this offense before. We're talking about all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. It's so nice being able to keep up with everything in real time like that, especially when you have the option for live in-game betting. So you can kind of see which way the game is going and bet kind of on your feel of the game. But the Chargers are on their bye week, so you know I have to go with my San Diego Padres tonight because I'm going to the game. The Padres are currently minus 152 on the money line to win the game. Game one of the wild card series, but you could also take them at minus 1.5 at plus 140, coming off of a doubleheader, traveling East Coast to West Coast. I'm loving the Padres tonight. And you could also get the hit king, Luis Ariz, at 2+ hits at plus 195. The batting champion, sorry, Shohei. And you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet on FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. All right, David, let's get into more of these buy or sells here because we love getting into the biggest storylines and overreactions. And I think heading into the bye week, 2 weeks to have to sit on a loss like the one we saw last weekend, and honestly, 2 weeks to kind of sit on back-to-back losses after the really promising 2-0 start that this team did get off to. But one of the most frustrating parts of the last game was Joshua Palmer and that just play 3rd and short where, you just got to keep your feet. You got to have better game awareness. You got to be on the same page as your quarterback, who obviously thought you were going upfield when you decided to stop, and then you ended up having to go reach and dive for the ball. That really didn't need to be dove for, right? Yeah. But I do think the frustration is settling in with the fans a little bit, which is why we get a voicemail like this from John in Anaheim.
Hey, guys. This is John in Anaheim. Good, happy birthday. Sorry the Chargers didn't pull off that win for you. Got to buy yourself. Joshua Palmer is not a number 1 or 2 wide receiver. He's a wide receiver 3 at best. Love to hear your take. Thanks, guys.
David, we were obviously very high on Joshua Palmer's kind of prospects this year, at least as the guy returning with the most chemistry with Justin Herbert. And he's missed a game so far this year, but it just hasn't translated into anything impactful or really meaningful. Are you buying or selling that he might not be a wide receiver 1 or 2?
I am buying it. The reason why I'm buying it is because the main issue with Joshua Palmer has always been the main issue, and it's the nagging injuries that he has dealt with throughout his entire career. You can't be a number 1 or number 2 wide receiver if you can't stay healthy. And it sucks to say that, but the facts and the reality is what it is. And Josh Palmer this year has been on the injury report every single week, dealing with multiple injuries, not just one, like 2 or 3 different ones at the same time. And he's still toughing it out and he's still going out there and producing. But the fact is Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston have outperformed and outproduced Joshua Palmer up to this point. So to sit here and say he's a wide receiver 1 or 2 would just be lying. And I'm not going to do that. So that's the reason why I am buying it.
And we said all along, right, that there was not going to be a real number 1 wide receiver in this offense. But there are 2 guys that have looked much more like it so far than Joshua Palmer has. And like, it's 4 games in. He's played 3 games. In 3 games, he has 7 catches for 70 yards. Nothing spectacular. Had a nice catch in the last game before the one that got everybody upset. But you're right. I mean, the nagging injuries are just a part of the story now. It's something that can't be avoided. It's not a blip on the radar. It's a constant. And you can't really even just look at the games that he's missed because there's just been other games where you've just seen that he's not really 100% and not really able to produce. Josh Palmer could be a good receiver and still has a chance to be this season, right? We're only 4 games into the season. I think the best parts of his season are still ahead of him, and it's a very low bar that he set for himself right now. But he also had the drop touchdown early in the season too. It's just, in that last game, you just have to be better in that moment. And I don't know if that makes him just a wide receiver 4 or something like that just for that, but it's just the whole kind of package we see right now. In this offense, he hasn't been able to take that leap we just desperately hoped he could, and a wide receiver group that kind of needs it. And those other guys have been really outperforming not just Josh Palmer this year, but what we expected from them. I think Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey have both been good.
Definitely.
It just hasn't quite been enough because neither of those guys is a true wide receiver one at this point in their careers either, which I think is what kind of leads to a buy or sell like this from Spence. Buy or sell, we are starting to see the impacts of trading away Keenan Allen on the offense. No wide receivers getting open, and traded away a huge security blanket on third down for Justin Herbert. David, you buying or selling that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is Jim Harbaugh and the way that he plays, you look back, they don't really have number one wide receivers. That's just not something that's been a focal point of his teams that he's run. So, have they, missed out on or missed Keenan Allen in the offense? Of course they have. Like that chemistry that, he and Justin Herbert established where they could speak and communicate without speaking, like that was evident, that they were on the same page. Like Keenan Allen was going to shatter records last year before he went down and Justin Herbert went down with the injury. Like he was on pace to catch like 130 balls or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it absolutely has, affected. But I will say it is coming much, more clear as the days go by and the weeks go by that Ladd McConkey has all of the ability to become that security blanket for Justin Herbert with his route running ability, with his yards after catch ability, with his, his ability to be where he needs to be, which, Justin Herbert's that supercomputer and he wants people to be exactly where he expects them to be. Ladd McConkey has shown through 4 games that he has the propensity to be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree, but Ladd McConkey's not Keenan Allen, right? I mean,
no,
Keenan
of course
Allen
not. I'm not
is,
saying that either.
Sure, but it feels a little bit like, hey, you're saying maybe Ladd McConkey could replace it, but it's not now, right?
No, yeah.
Like Keenan Allen would have helped you this season if you'd been out there, but that's the whole thing, right? I mean, so far, Keenan Allen
he's been hurt too. Yeah.
Hard to miss him too much because he would have missed half the games of the Chargers season had it gone the way it's gone so far in Chicago. And in those 2 games with a rookie quarterback that has played, well below what his expectations were.
Oh, yeah.
He has pretty moderate stats, to say the least. He hasn't really done anything this year. So I think that for Keenan Allen, they are missing him, and it's on third down specifically. I mean, the Chargers ranked 20th in the league, converting 36.4% of third downs. And Ladd McConkey, even though he has been kind of the guy on third down when they've needed him to, they're also pretty bad on third down. So there's a lot of third downs it's not getting to Ladd McConkey for one reason or another, right? Keenan Allen's ready to do it this year. Keenan Allen helps you more this year if he's out there. But like we said, he hasn't really been out there very much for Chicago. I think he still would have been very good and producing at a high level if he was in Los Angeles with Justin Herbert, even in a different offense. They're missing him, but like it's just him and Mike Williams to not be able to bail you out. But you have guys now that are at least out there consistently, and we'll see if that can at least turn into them being more trusted by Justin Herbert and taking up bigger roles and being able to be a part of a more efficient passing attack. But even just having young wide receivers isn't like the only problem with the offense. There's just a lot going wrong.
Definitely.
And when you're not able to run the ball and you're facing 3rd and 18s and 25s and 17s and 13s like we saw last week.
It's hard to play offense for anybody in those situations.
It'd be hard to play offense for anybody. And then it's also, even if you add Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, you're still not converting those at a higher clip or at a high clip, but it probably definitely would be a higher clip. So let's get to this one quickly here from David, who says, I don't know if it counts as buy or sell, but our defense not allowing more than 20 points through 4 weeks means we have an elite defense. And if the offense can figure it out, we can go on a run after the bye. David, buy or sell, if the offense can get any kind of consistency going, this is a team that can absolutely make a run after the bye week.
To be clear, this is another David, not me. Just so
David from Twitter.
Yeah, David from Twitter. Yeah, I'm gonna buy it because like the defense is for real. Like that's to me that's unequivocally a fact. Like they're fantastic. Jesse Minter has them really firing on all cylinders. Like I think the game plan that he put together against the Chiefs was, honestly pretty. Only maybe one step short of a masterclass. Like his ability to set up the rush lanes to keep him in the pocket, keep him frustrated. I mean, they only allowed probably 3 or 4 explosive plays in the game. Outside of that, like they were nails pretty much the entire time. And, he's shown that. I mean, 20 points or less, all 4 of these games. If the Chargers get that running game going like they said that they were going to, and they get Justin Herbert healthy and give him just a little bit more time to make some throws, then absolutely, yes, this team can go on a run.
They absolutely can, because it really doesn't have to take that much offensively to make it happen. And the Chargers so far this year have allowed 12.5 points per game. You would have told me that at the beginning of the season and then told me the Chargers were 2-2. I wouldn't have believed you. I would have thought they were at least 3-1 at that point, right? Like, You proved it against Kansas City. You proved it against Patrick Mahomes. Like, it's hard to fake that. You can't really fake it. So I think that, yeah, if you have a decent offense, if you have an average offense with a defense that's made a leap, that we'll see, how it stands the test of time. But like, it had a game without Joey Bosa and Derwin James and held Kansas City to 17 points. Yeah. It's about, that's it's hard to mask that, right?
So pretty good.
Yeah. If you have an average offense, this is a playoff team. So it's time for the offense to get it together. But it is also up to Joe Ortiz to figure out what to do during this bye week as far as improving this roster. And some even think maybe you should be trading players away like a Joey Bosa. We're going to buy or sell that. We'll get into that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about Game Time, because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you need tickets to any kind of event, get them with Game Time, because Game Time, you get the Game Time guarantee, meaning if you find another ticket on another site in the same section and row for less, they will credit you 110% of the difference. And I would know about the greatness of Game Time because I just used Game Time Picks to filter out the fluff and get great tickets for Game 1 of the Padres Wild Card Series starting tonight against the Atlanta Braves. And I'm so excited because Game Time, me and David even talked about it. Like, you can't put a price on memories and just having great moments, but you can get the best price on those memories at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. David, let's continue this buy or sell here with definitely a hot buy or sell here about Joey Bosa, and I know the frustrations are starting to ramp up on that again because, hey, when you lose back-to-back games, the level of heat is going to kind of raise on everyone. And when Joey Bosa, you're having kind of the same story play out in 2024 as it has just way too often in his career, I understand it. And the other thing is they played really, really well without him. So we're going to get to that, but I do want to thank all of our listeners, the everydayers out there, for making us your first listen today. And to make sure that you have a great second listen, check out the new lineup at Locked On NFL with 2 shows a day. Tyler the Madman rolling in the morning, the Barber, Tony Wiggins in the afternoon, giving you all of the best from the local experts around the Locked On Podcast Network, wherever you can find your podcast from, and on YouTube as well. Let's get to this here from Edgar S., who says, buy or sell, Joe Ortiz will not wait around for Joey Bosa to stay healthy and will shop him after seeing the defense flourish against Mahomes without him. David, woof! We're coming out with some big ones today on this buy or sell Tuesday. Are you buying or selling that?
Flames. With that being said, I'm going to sell it. Even after the pay cuts, Joey Bosa's cap hit is $26 million even now. And also, it's not going to be an easy contract to move, especially when you have a player that can't stay healthy. If he's not staying healthy for the Chargers, and he hasn't through his almost 10 years with the team, why do you think another team would want to bring him on? I just don't think that, to be able to make a move, you have to have another team that's willing and able to be able to do that. That means having a spot, having the cap space, and is in an opportunity to where Joey Bosa is going to want to agree to that, and his team's going to want to do that. So I just don't see any reason or any way that that's going to happen. I think if the Chargers and Joey Bosa are going to part ways, it will be after the season.
Yeah, I don't think he has a no. Does he have a no trade clause?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I didn't think so. I mean, they'll try and do right by him. I mean, the other problem is like this would be a very terrible look for the Chargers after he just took a pay cut in the offseason to make it work with this team for this season. I think this is much more about if he's going to stay with the team in 2025 and beyond when he has a gigantic cap hit next year. And if he continues to get hurt, we'll have no way of kind of justifying that number. He's had like basically a game and a half of healthy play this year, right? I mean, He played 14 snaps against the Panthers. He got hurt very early on against the Steelers and didn't play against Kansas City Chiefs. And he had 2 sacks in those very, very limited snaps.
Still really good, which is what's really frustrating.
Good. I think the other part is like, it doesn't help the Chargers this season, right? Like it just doesn't. There's nothing they're going to get back that's going to help them this season. It would be for future, considerations and draft capital. And there are teams that are always going to want to add pass rushers, especially ones of Joey Bosa's caliber. But with what his cap hit is going to be next year, it's going to be hard for a lot of people to fit that in mid-season with where the Brooks are currently at right now. So there are ways to tinker around with that and ways to kind of offset bonuses, all that. I don't see it happening at all this year. I think it's more impacting his chances of 2025. It sucks, man. But so far, it's been the same story. Ben Herbert or not. Hopefully, he can come back healthy after the bye week, because I understand what the performance was against Kansas City. You're a better football team if Joey Bosa is out there. Period. End of story. You can like him. You can hate him. You can hate the fact that he's injured. They're better with him out there. And those other guys being, rotational guys like Bud Dupree and Tuli Tuipulotu. So it just is what it is. I don't see him getting traded, though, this year. Let's get to this next one here from Kerry Jalal, who says, buy or sell, Joe Ortiz must use this bye week to seek out reinforcements for the offensive line, especially the interior. Offensive line is the position group that is currently the weakest on the team, Slater and all being the only exceptions, more so than the wide receivers and the defensive backs. I mean, I don't think the Chargers really didn't do much at defensive back at all. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think they're great. Yeah.
I would buy, though, that if you're talking about the weakest part, what has held this team back so far the most, it is the interior of the offensive line, and it's honestly not that close.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's very obvious. The interior of the offensive line is clearly the biggest deficiency on this football team. I am buying that he's looking, that Joe Ortiz will go out there and try to make some phone calls and look to try to upgrade in that position, because that's what he's already shown us, that he's been relentless about churning and turning over this roster. And I feel for the first time in a decade that my general manager will go make a move to make my football team better in the middle of the season. He's not going to just do it before the season. He's not going to not trade. Like, he's already made a trade that's already made an impact already this season with Elijah Molden. Elijah Molden's been fantastic for the Chargers. And so, I think Joe Ortiz has already shown that he will go out there and make the moves. And also, it's Jim Harbaugh saying, hey, this is a problem. And I think if he does that, Joe Ortiz will go try to fix that problem.
Yeah, I think it's very important, obviously, that the coaching staff is relaying to Joe Ortiz exactly what they need. I mean, this is the time when you can identify those weaknesses. I think the hard thing is you're 2-2, 4 games into the season, so it's kind of hard to tell what your full season prospects are going to be. It's hard to tell if you should be a buyer or a seller at the deadline, because we're still a month plus away from the deadline. So I think that's what makes it difficult as far as the timing-wise. I could absolutely see them scouring practice squads, right? Trying to look and kick the tires on some free agents while you have an extra week to get them integrated and get them up to speed in the offense. I definitely feel like we will see a move from Joe Ortiz. I think the problem is with these other positions, like, you shouldn't just really add another guy at wide receiver. And we'll see the impact that DJ Chark makes when he gets back. But if you're going to add a wide receiver, it has to be kind of a top-of-the-line wide receiver, or somebody that's going to obviously jump to the top of your depth chart. You can't just fix it with just kind of a random veteran off the streets or somebody off of a practice squad. What they miss the most is having that one kind of go-to guy. That's what they don't have right now. And I don't know if they're going to make that big of a move this early in the season. But the interior of the offensive line has to be addressed. It's just, will they look outside? Will they try to look at the options on, inside the building right now? I think that's where Andrew Murray comes from with this buy or sell here. The interior offensive line, Pipkins, Bozeman, and Zion Johnson are all starting together by the end of the season. Buy or sell? This one was kind of tough for me.
Yeah, I'm going to sell it, actually. And the reason why I'm going to sell it is because I feel like with Jim Harbaugh, with Joe Ortiz, that this organization currently has the intestinal fortitude to make a move and shuffle the line to find a more cohesive and productive unit. I really do feel like he's going to, move this thing around, get this thing adjusted until they figure out they can find the right mix. Because right now, I don't know if anybody knows if it is the right mix, and it sure hasn't looked like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to say that, because it feels like the coaching staff loves Bradley Bozeman, and flowers to Bradley Bozeman. He showed up in this last game. He might have been the only one on that offensive line that showed up in the last game. He's the only one on the offensive line that didn't give up a pressure. He's the only one that didn't give up multiple pressures, because it was multiple pressures by every other player along that offensive line in the last game. And like we said, the fourth highest rate that Herbert's been pressured in his entire career. We're talking about, years of Storm Norton and like Sam Tevy. So it's nuts. I mean, Trey Pipkins, I actually think he's been fine when he's at guard, but you haven't been able to use him at guard. He's been stuck at tackle where he's not as good. Yeah. Would not surprise me at all if they made a change. I guess I would buy it. I mean, I guess you could, take the easy route and say, well, someone definitely could get injured here, and that's, how it happens. But the problem is Zion Johnson, man. At least as far as the expectations go, like, I understand that he's not going to ever potentially live up to that first round pick. You can't be the worst, right? Like, you can't be terrible. And like, unfortunately with him, there's just been too many of those moments where the consistency just isn't there. He has, a good week, and you're like, hey, maybe the tide has turned a little bit, and then he'll just have terrible weeks where it's derailing everything. And I know the Chargers have a lot of moving pieces. The book isn't totally out on it, but at a certain point, Zion Johnson is what he is. And so far in 4 games, we haven't seen that change. And the leap that we wanted him to take definitely hasn't happened. And it has been a huge hindrance to this Chargers offense. But it can be better. It should be better. I hope and I believe that they will explore all the options they have there. But at a certain point, one of the options has to be potentially not starting your former first-round pick, Zion Johnson, if he's not the best guy out there. Obviously, last week they started Sam Mustipher at guard. So their options are everywhere and all over the place in what they're doing. So we'll see. It has to get better, though. This is like, we're going to give some leniency to this offense to take these 2 weeks and figure it out and see what you can do after that against the Broncos, against the Cardinals, against some very beatable teams, but teams that could test you as well. So we'll see what this offense can do, but so far it hasn't been good enough, and they are wasting a truly remarkable job being done by Jesse Minter on the defensive side of the football right now. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. We still have a lot more coming up this week, including maybe some potential moves the Chargers could make during this bye week and any kind of news that comes out. Also getting into a Chargers mailbag where you can hit us up at LockedOnLAC on Twitter, where we'll put a post out and have you guys tell us what you want us to talk about. But until then, guys, make sure you're following and subscribing for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find the show every day on our other social media like Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogemeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD. And if you guys want to be like a Thier and call into the voicemail line, you can do that at 323-524-7924. But thank you all so much. We're excited for everything we get to do. We're going to try to get some guests during this bye week as well. And we appreciate you guys rocking with us as always. But we're back with you guys tomorrow. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.